Hi, it's me, an average reader. I want to do a pretty straightforward video today because I've had a bit of a break. So this is just a little disclaimer. I just sat down to edit the video that I've just made, and I don't know, I think the camera was on the wrong settings. It was on like 30 frames per second for Ultra HD, so it's a bit of a weird look. It's a bit hazy, I don't know. So I apologise for that. If you can, just listen to it, maybe. There's not really many visual cues in the video anyway. It's literally me just talking. So maybe just stick your phone on the side and listen to it like a podcast. If you are someone that likes to watch the videos, then I apologise for that in advance. And next time, it will not happen. Anyway, enjoy the video. Well, try to. Bye. I had my final week of my nursing course last week. So I spent the weekend celebrating and just getting used to the idea that it's over. That weight's off my shoulders. And in the next month, I'll be a registered mental health nurse here in the UK. In some countries, I think it's a psychiatric nurse, but we basically do the same sort of thing. It's a pretty straightforward concept. It's an A to Z Q&A based around books and Booktube. I was inspired by Chris's Library, which is one of my favourite YouTube channels. I often watch his videos, and I watched them before I started making videos myself. It seems straightforward enough to do, so I just thought, let me jump in and do the same thing. It's a good way for you guys to get to know me, because I know I'm probably a bit elusive. There's not really any information about me on my page, and I don't even use my real name for the Booktube tag. It's nothing personal to you guys, it's more related to my profession. As I said, mental health nurse, psychiatric nurse. There's a lot of confidentiality and information governance involved in my job, so I thought it's easier if I just make my Booktube separate from all of that. Excuse any background noise. If there's harsh cuts, it's because I had to cut because of the background noise. I thought it'd be nice to film today with this lovely outdoor view. It's a heat wave in London again. So being near these all stops me from melting into a puddle, and then allows me to film the video. I've got the questions here on my trusty tablet. I feel a bit like a morning news presenter, but I'm going to try and let that go. Obviously, we're going to start with A. Author you've read the most books from. So really, it's going to be two that come to mind straight away. So it's either Stephen King, because I've got a lot of Stephen King books and I've loved Stephen King probably for over a decade. I've been reading Stephen King, and then J.K. Rowling, because one, Harry Potter is it 7 books? But then she also releases under Robert Galbraith for the Camorra Strike books. It's probably my favourite crime thriller series because it's set in London and it feels very real. Like all the places mentioned in it are places I've been and go to frequently. For example, Denmark Street is one of my favourite places to go. There's a massive bookshop and guitar shop, so it's two of my favourite loves in one place. B, for best sequel ever. I think I'm actually going to struggle with this one because I read a lot of standalone stuff, and I did just mention a few series actually that I've read, but I don't know if this is it direct sequel or can it be any of the sequels in that list. If it can be any of them in the list, then my OG soul-shaking sequel was Goblet of Fire. I was obsessed with that book. It was the biggest book I'd ever read at that time when I was a teenager, so I grew up with Harry Potter. I think I've mentioned that before. It came out and then me and Harry were the same age, so every time the books came out we were around the same age, and I love dragons. They're one of my absolute loves. Side note, House of the Dragon is my favourite show of all time, and Goblet of Fire is obviously full of the dragon stuff, but the dragon on the front of the OG cover as well was, so yeah, I'd say Goblet of Fire. C, for currently reading. I was reading Silence of the Lambs by Tom Harris, which is a sequel to Red Dragon, and they feature Hannibal Lecter, very gory, very forensically motivated crime series. It is amazing, but because it's amazing and it is a crime series, that means it's really gory, a bit chilling, quite unsettling. And I felt like, because I was on a real high from finishing my course, I wanted something a bit more light-hearted to get into. And I was walking past my local charity shop and I saw this book, which I am planning to do a video about, We Could Be Heroes by P.J. Ellis, which I'd heard about, I'd seen it online, and I saw the cover, I saw a superhero holding up another guy and thought, that looks like the sort of thing I'd enjoy. And I'm absolutely loving it so far. It's making me laugh out loud. I like, this is just a real diverse bunch of characters with a very real, and it's set in Birmingham, which is near where I grew up, so it feels really local to me. It's a little bit raunchy, like it's a bit steamy, especially in this heat wave as well. I'm reading it like, but it's really good. D, for drink of choice while reading. So the main thing that I drink is tea. I've even got one in front of me right now, but it can be coffee as well. Water, if I'm absolutely desperate. I'm not really a massive fan of water. If it's ice cold, I'll drink it. But yeah, really it's tea. Sometimes decaf coffee, because I have Crohn's disease. If I drink fully caffeinated coffee, no. E for e-reader or physical books. Now this debate, I just don't even. So I love both. I have, famously on this channel, my Kobo Libra Color, which is my bestest pal. I've had Kindles in the past. I have all the reading apps on this tablet. Oh, there's an alarm going off. So, because I have my Kobo, sometimes I read physical books as well, but I just sort of jump between the two based on what I want to read at that time. It's my birthday next week, so I'll be travelling around the country, sort of doing little stops here and there to visit family and friends, and I'll take probably one physical book, because when it's my birthday, people often get me books, so there probably will be a video about my birthday haul. But then also my Kobo, because there's loads of TBRs on there. It's got my library, as in actual UK library access, so why wouldn't I take my Kobo? And it's tiny and it will fit in my bag, so it's just a no-brainer. But also, putting my mental health nurse hat on for a moment, these are so good at making reading accessible for people who have whatever, you know, various challenges that they have. So say somebody who's depressed and they don't feel like sitting up and reading a physical book, you can get audiobooks on here. Someone who's got dyslexia or learning difficulties, you can make so many adjustments to the text and the lighting to make it more accessible for somebody. You've got the dictionary built in, you can save quotes, and again, the size means you can take everything everywhere with you, and this little beauty's got colour. And yeah, I don't understand the snobbery when it comes to e-readers. It feels a bit elitist, like people just want to be seen reading physical books. But then my question there is, if you're so worried about what people see you reading, are you really reading for pleasure? I mean, whatever. For fictional character, you would have dated in high school. Oh man, this list is long. No, it's not. I mean, how? Okay, there's a few fictional characters that spring to mind. I know it's based on book. So, comic books, because I did read a lot of those when I was younger. Superman was the love of my life, is the love of my life. And every actor that plays Superman has to have that same look. So if I was going to actually choose a character from a book, it would have been Russell Middlebrook. And this is an OG reference for all the young gays out there that read this stuff. I mean, and straight people, but probably mainly young closeted gay teenagers. The Geography Club by Brent Hartinger, which I struggled to say that name so many times that if there was an outtakes for this video, it would mainly be me trying to say that name. I don't know why I kept struggling with it. And the character is Russell Middlebrook. He was like closeted gay kid, lots of angst, and secretly talking to a guy that he liked online, and they'd see each other in the hallway and not know they're talking to each other. And I just really related to that as well as a teenager. Sort of the whole thing of when you're a young gay man is you are always in love with people you can have. So yeah, because I know I could have, well, that sounds presumptuous. Because I know there would have been a shot, it would be Russell. G for glad you gave this book a chance. It's basically going to be a book that I have preconceived ideas of, isn't it? Because glad I gave it a chance means that I probably thought, this looks a bit rubbish, read it and enjoyed it. The Assassin's Apprentice by Hobb is probably that for me. But then I didn't like the sequel. I actually DNF'd the sequel. First book that I really enjoyed, and I wasn't sure. I read about it and I heard people talking about it and I was like, oh, I just don't know. I did start it and then wasn't sure and stopped reading it for like a couple of months, then went back to it, started it again and just went absolutely blasted through it and really enjoyed it. So maybe I'll do the same thing with the sequel, because I started the sequel straight after and just started to find myself not interested. You know, when you're reading, you start thinking about like, oh, what am I going to have for dinner and I need to go to the shop. That's what was happening. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to move on to something else. H for Hidden Gem Book. Okay, Hidden Gem Book. Oh, God, there's so many that I have that are a bit rare, especially like queer books. There's one I had to order from Australia, which is Holding the Man by Timothy Conigrave. That book absolutely ripped my heart to shreds. I literally remember reading that like it was yesterday in my mum's garden, just blasting through it. It's not a very long book. It's a true story. It's a memoir about a guy who falls in love with his high school sort of best friend, well, love of his life, and it chucks their story together through the AIDS crisis and beyond, and it just, I think it's so important to read books like that that are history. So it's, you know, I'm a gay man who's living in London, fairly liberal city. I'm very lucky, and to read about what it was like then, especially with AIDS happening as well. Wow, I mean, it just shook me, it shook my soul, and it's a book that I always think about even now, and I've read it a couple of times, and I always recommend it to people. So yeah, that's definitely my hidden gem book. I thought important moment in your reading life. I think when I got back into reading, so I read as a kid, I read Harry Potter mainly as a kid, so it was like one book a year. And then I just stopped, I started playing guitar, was into like drawing comic books and things, and I just never really picked up books to read. And I used to think, oh, I want to get back into reading, and I read a tiny bit at uni, but that was like compulsory. And then I was with my cousin shopping in our hometown in Shropshire, and we went into a charity shop, and she was buying loads of books. She's always been an avid reader, like really into reading. And she recommended to me a book, because I said, oh, you know, I wish I could get back into reading. And she said, you should try this one. And she gave me I Am Pilgrim by Terry Hayes. And so I took it home, and it's a bit of a beast. I would pick it up, but I don't think it's in this room. And so I went home and I tried the first chapter, and it just got me. And it sort of reminded me what it's like when a book is just amazing, you can't put it down. And I absolutely blasted through it. And then from there, I started reading again, and I have been for the last, I don't know, 15 years or so, something like that. So yeah, I was very grateful for that moment, because now reading is like my greatest escape. It's what I do if I'm feeling low, it's what I do if I'm feeling happy, it's what I do if I'm feeling something in between, anxious, whatever. Like when I started new placements or had exams, to take my head out of that and stop ruminating, I'd read fantasy or thrillers, and yeah, it would just take me right out of it. So reading is my greatest medicine. J for just finished reading. So I did just mention this book. I just finished reading Red Dragon, so last week, I think it was last week, by Tom Harris. Follows Will Graham, who is a investigator investigating a murderer and has to seek the help of Hannibal Lecter. That's all I really need to tell you about that book, really. Very dark, but very good. Yeah, okay, for kinds of books you won't read. Straight away, there is a name that comes out, and this sounds like shade. It's not. I don't even know what these books are about, but there's just something about the fact that they're everywhere. It feels a bit like a infection, like a fungal infection that I can't be rid of. Colleen Hoover. I don't even know what the books are about, but every time I see one, they just dominate the charts, which obviously says they're popular. So really, I'm being an idiot, because if they're popular, that means they've got a big audience, which means there must be something about them. But I just will not read them. I don't know why, because there's lots of popular books I do read, but there's just something about them. They say not to judge a book by its cover, but that cover just turns me completely off. So before anybody comes in the comments and tells me how stupid that is,
I know that is stupid.
L for the longest book I've read. It's going to be War and Peace or The Stand. The Stand is one of my favourite books of all time, but the expanded edition, which is the one I have, is a massive slog. I think it's over 1,000 pages, but I loved every bit of it. I've read it 3 times already. That's one of the ones that I would use as a benefits to an e-reader, because I have the physical one, which actually when I read it, it would hurt my wrists, and then when I read it again, I read it on an e-reader, and it is just so much better. M for major book hangover because of. So I don't know if this means, because to me a hangover is not a good thing, but for a book hangover I think can be a good thing. I mean, there's a few, I've mentioned it before, A Little Life, one of my favourite books of all time, but I know it's very divisive. That definitely gave me a book hangover. Young Mungo by Douglas Stewart actually is one that I read within the last year, and it just completely devoured me and left me just thinking, I want to know what happens. Like, what happens to the rest of these guys' lives? I need to know. To the point where I tweeted to the author and said, please tell me you're going to write a sequel. And he did like it and send back a little heart, which I took as, there will be a sequel just for you. He's doing a sequel for you. I know that's really not true, but I live in hope. So if you ever see this, which you probably won't, Douglas Stewart, please can we get a sequel to Young Mungo? And the number of bookcases you own. So I had a bigger flat before this one, when we had to move and downsize for a little bit, and I had to sell my bookcases. We only have this unit now, which I'm not going to get up and turn on the camera, but it's a bookcase thing with the TV stand built in. Technically just one bookcase at the moment, and then lots of books in storage. O for one book you've read multiple times. So I did touch on The Stand, which I read multiple times. A Little Life I've read multiple times. And there's a lot of non-fiction I read multiple times. I think it was just one book I read multiple times, but I've just listed more than one. There we go. P for preferred place to read. So I like spots like this, where there's a bit of sun and a breeze. But I also am a very strange person, and I love winter and autumn. So reading in a coffee shop in autumn or winter is just beautiful. And also public transport, I quite like reading on public transport. Q for quote that inspires you / gives you the feels. I find it really hard to remember a lot of the things that I read. That's one of the main issues that I have when I'm reading non-fiction and like trying to learn things for my job. So that's again where e-readers come in handy, because you can highlight passages and save them and then view them all in one place, which is just really useful. So I'm going to have to take a moment now to look through my save quotes on my tablet, because it also transfers between. Right, so I was going to go in non-fiction before. That's a little bit boring. Let me think about what's one of my absolute favourite fiction quotes, and it is from Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I bet that's a bit of a curveball. People weren't expecting that from me, Mr. I've just been talking about crushes on Superman. And the quote goes as follows: "Welcome to my house, enter freely, go safely, and leave something of the happiness you bring." I love that quote because it's the sort of quote that you could have in a shopping centre on a mug. People will think, oh yeah, welcome to my home, yay, like we're sharing happiness. But that's not really what Dracula means when he says that. He's saying that you're welcome to come into his house, you're going in of your own free will. He's going to slowly take from you, which is what he does. So he says that you're going to leave some of the happiness you bring. He ain't joking. He's going to chip away and chip away and chip away. And it was really cool because it was just like basically a warning to this person, and they still went in anyway because it just sounds like he's being polite. R for reading regret. I mean, I don't ever really get reading regrets. I think if I start a book and I don't like it, then I just stop reading it. And I don't regret it, I just think, okay, on to the next one. I guess if I could regret something, it'd be the books that I read and now wish that I could read again for the first time. That's my regret, is that I read them and loved them so much that I'll never be able to read them again. S for series you started and need to finish. First one that comes to mind is the Riftwall Saga by Raymond E. Feist, which I absolutely loved, and I read the first 2 books and there's one left and I cannot remember the name of it, but that's one I want to get to. A Darkness at Vernon is the 3rd book. Because I said I can't remember the name of it, I remember I'm holding a literal computer in my hand. T for 3 of your all-time favourite books. I keep spoiling the answers to these questions before I even get to them. So A Little Life is up there, and then it's going to be a non-fiction, so In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts by Goblet, which is a book about addiction. So it's case studies of different people he met as a general practitioner and worked with them to overcome their addictions and support them. A lot of books you read are aimed at curing addiction, which is just not really something that is actually medically possible. It's psychologically driven, but it's also physiological, and you need holistic approaches. I'm not going to get into too much of that stuff, but this book was the antithesis of that for me, and just the compassion that he shows the different people that he meets, and when he shares their stories, he's always thinking about respect and dignity with them, and it allowed me to see the sort of practitioner I wanted to be before I even started training as a mental health nurse. So that's a book I absolutely recommend. And number 3, probably The Stand. Yeah, Stephen King classic, love it. So yeah, A Little Life, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, and The Stand. U for Unapologetic Fangirl for. I mentioned it so much, it would be ridiculous if I didn't just say A Little Life. Because, and again, I know it's a controversial book. When I talk about it with such joy, it's not because I'm ignoring the context of the book, but I love it so much. I've read it, I listened to it on audiobook, I have seen the West End theatre production of it. I think part of it's related to the job I do. I just find that whole story really compelling. And so yeah, I'm an unapologetic fangirl for it. And also those t-shirts with the names on. Oh my. I was never able to get one of those here. And when I see people with them on, I literally like, and then when I went to see the theatre show, I thought, oh, they'll definitely have those t-shirts there. And they were sold out in my size. So that was devastating. But I did get a playbook, which is very cool. V, for very excited for this release. more than any others. There is a book that has just come out. I think it came out last week, which I am very excited for, and I haven't brought it yet because it's on my birthday wish list. The Book of Elsewhere by Keanu Reeves and China Miéville. I probably said that name wrong, but I tried. I just love Keanu Reeves. And when I found out there was a book coming out, I just thought that's something I need to read. I'm very excited about it, and I really hope that somebody does get that one off the wish list. I have talked about it a lot. It's dropping heavy hints to people. It's listed as a mind-blowing epic from Keanu Reeves and China Miéville, and like anything these two genre-bending pioneers have created before, inspired by the world of the Berserker comic books, she said, we needed a tool, so I asked for the gods. That sounds right up my street. W was habit. I think it's starting books, then seeing other books I want to read, and wanting to start them without finishing the one I'm already on. And that also links into buying books when I've already got books I haven't read yet. So I have a continuous backlog that I will never, ever, ever get through. And I'm fine with that. I've accepted my flaws, and I'll just keep buying more books. Like I've literally just said to you, I look over here, I see a pile of books I've not read yet, and I've given my family a wish list of more books that I want, that I won't have read yet. X marks the spot, the 27th book on your shelf. So I went away and counted and landed on a bit of a classic, Lord of the Rings, but the condensed trilogy version, not the 3 separate books. I don't really know. Do I need to tell you about that book? It's a book by J.R. Tolkien, and no, everybody knows what Lord of the Rings is. That's the 27th book on my shelf. Why? Your latest book purchase. So I've already shown you it. We Could Be Heroes, because I only got that end of last week. But it's a new release. That's why I was surprised to see it in this charity shop window, and it has the sticker on it that says newly published. So when I saw it, it just felt like a sign, because I saw it actually and waited a couple of days. I was like, no, I'll put it on my birthday wish list. And then every time I'd go past the shop, it was still in the window, and I started to feel more and more sad for it, and just thought that book needs a home. So I went in and brought it. Z for Z Snatcher. I think it means sleep snatcher. Last book that kept you up way too late. So a book I read called Haus by P.J. Vernon. That was about a month ago, and I read that. It was one of the first books I read on my new Kobo color. A guy intends to cheat on his partner, who's been with for a long time. He goes to a bathhouse to have this affair whilst his partner's away, and then in the bathhouse he gets attacked by a random man who tries to kill him, but he escapes. And the book goes from there, really. And if that excites you, then I would give it a go. I started it, and at the time I was like, I don't know if I really like this. But then it started to take some pretty swift turns and things that I didn't see coming. And by the end of it, so that last day I was reading it, I started reading it like 10 o'clock and thought I'll read half an hour and then go to sleep. I think on my way past like 1 a.m. and I was still powering through with it, and then finished it and couldn't sleep for an hour. So I think I went to bed like 3 o'clock. And that hasn't happened for a while, so I would recommend it. It was quite gripping. There were some bits I would change. Maybe I should review that book actually, because I didn't make a lot of notes about things that I was a bit like, but I did enjoy it. So that is the end of the questions, and that means it's the end of the video. So I hope you enjoyed it. As always, I'd love to hear about what you guys have been reading, any more book recommendations you've got for me. Next week is my birthday, and I will be in my hometown, but I do plan on doing some vlogging there, showing you guys a little bit of where I grew up, my favourite bookshops there, and my favourite reading spots whilst I was there. And I just want to thank you guys for your support as always. If you can, like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much. Take care, enjoy your reading, and I'll see you again.